if you think of it as a container of energy, a lot of people are storing judgment, shame, conditioning, expectations into that little container of energy. And both of you are holding that container of energy all the time. And so if we're storing that level of emotion or energy in the container between us, over time, people aren't going to want to hold that container because it doesn't become a source of anything good for either of you. It just becomes a source of all of those emotions. So I actually think the first step is acknowledging that there's this container between us that we're both investing in. It's like a pool of water. When I'm working with cultures and leaders, I talk to people about everyone in the culture is pouring water into that culture. And we want that water to be clear and something that everyone can swim in. And it's the same thing in a relationship. So if you think about this container of energy that we're pouring into, what is the energy that you're pouring into your relationship? And then how does it actually feel to be in that? I think that in itself, just that sacred responsibility of, oh, I'm actually contributing to this. I think a lot of people see relationships as happening to us, almost as though we're victims of the other person, and their energy. But when we start to empower ourselves and realize that we're contributing as well, we're both contributing, something happens, something shifts.
Welcome to the Wisdom We Share podcast, where ancient truths and modern intelligence weave together to inspire, ground, and shape us for a wiser, awakened life. I'm Anjani Amrit.
And I'm Robin Wald. And together we bring you fascinating conversations from the worlds of spirituality, science, and human behavior, so you can connect to your own inner wisdom, joy, and clarity, elevating the way you actually live your life.
Today, we're speaking with someone whose work sits at the nexus of self-awareness, connecting science and leadership. Dr. Ali Walker, with a background in law, a PhD in human behavior, and battens of media experiences, Ali has dedicated her life to asking, how do we truly connect, lead, and belong? Her latest book, Click or Clash, explores the motivations that drive how we relate to others and how understanding our wiring can shift everything from teams, families, and relationships right through to our own soul's call. This conversation is not about quick fixes or leadership checklists. It's about tuning in to what really lights us up, what holds us back, and how the quality of our inner world shapes our connections and contributions. Ali, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for that beautiful bio. I'd love it actually, because I'd like to use it again because you actually just shed so much light on what I do for me.
Yeah, it's really intriguing what you do. You bring in quite a number of experiences and wisdom from different aspects of life. I want to start off in your book, Click or Clash. You show how underlying motivational drivers determine whether we're feeling aligned or in conflict. And a big part of the work I do is about getting into alignment, releasing what I call resistance. When you first discovered this in your research, what did you realize about your own wiring, and how did that perhaps change your life?
Wow. It changed my life in every way. In fact, it's still changing my life. So just to give a bit of context to the book Click or Clash and the framework that is at its basis, I started off actually after my PhD, I started off thinking about well-being, and I thought I would be a well-being researcher. And as I went a little bit further along, I realized that yes, I was a well-being researcher, but at the heart of well-being and the most important indicator of well-being is relationships. And so much so that it's almost has double the impact of, say, diet, exercise, sleep is still obviously, all these things are very important. You can't take them away. But if you look at the outcomes for people who are thriving in their lives, particularly as we age, the one clear differentiator is our relationships, the quality of our social relationships. And that's the Harvard study of adult development that's been running since 1938 that has articulated that most clearly. And so I realized, okay, yes, I am a wellbeing researcher, but I need to focus here on relationships. And I wanted to understand what makes us feel lonely, because if you think about the absence of connection and the absence of belonging, that experience is loneliness. And I ended up developing a framework that helps us understand how we experience loneliness and how we experience true connection. And that framework is at the heart of the book. And the elements of alignment that you're speaking about, there's two elements. One is frequency of connection, so how much you need, and the other one is intensity of connection. And no one talks about this. People say, yes, you need social connection in order to have well-being. But no one talks about what that actually means to have meaningful and authentic social connection, because for you that might be something, it might look very different to what I need in terms of my connection, and that's what I wanted to understand. So and 25,000 people have now taken the assessment to understand what true connection looks like for them, what loneliness looks like for them. So I now have some fantastic research to base a lot of this work on. And I'll give you an example. One of the most compelling aspects of the research is when I ask people, how do you most like to connect? I say, on your own. So there's 5 options: on your own, one-on-one, in a small group of 2 to 5, or sorry, in a small group of 3 to 5, in a large group of 6 to 15, or at a party or network or conference event. And 60% of people say in a small group of 3 to 5. 60% of people. Now that's pretty compelling. So then I go into workplaces and say, if you want to have psychologically safe groups and teams to work with, try to break up your teams into groups of 3 to 5. So that's an example of how meaningful connection can occur and how misalignment can happen so easily. But I'm going off on lots of different tracks here. So I'll come back to see if there's anything you want to hone into or hone in on.
So thank you so much for all of that context. And wow, yes, I have so many follow-up questions. I'm curious if you have the data to share on those other 4. How many people out of 100%, if 60% want to connect in small group, 3 to 5
Mm.
people, how many on their own, how many one-to-one, large group
Yeah.
versus like math? Yeah.
I don't have the exact numbers off the top of my head, but I can tell you the next most popular was one-on-one,
Mm.
then small group, then large group of 6 to 15, then on your own. And the final one was party or networking event, which is so funny. And this comes back to what meaningful connection looks like. We think, I need social connection. I'll have a party. I'll do something to get everyone together. And that was actually the least popular way of experiencing connection. But just very quickly, so then we have all the full context, just to go back to the frequency and intensity. I say to, when I'm talking to groups of people, I say to people, the stories that we tell and the language that we use is around, I like that person, I don't like that person. I love being around this person, I can't stand this person. That's the language we use. And I say to people, it's actually unscientific to use those terms. We need to start saying we are a match in frequency, or we are not a match in frequency. We are a match in intensity, or we are not a match in intensity, because that's what determines how we connect with other people. So frequency is just how much connection you like with other people. If you're a low frequency connector, so that's correlated with being an introvert, you're going to want to be on your own for more than half the time. If you're an ambivert, so I call it mid-frequency connector, you want to be on your own around half the time, with others around half the time. And then if you're a high frequency connector, an extrovert, You want to be around other people for more than half the time. So many issues in our relationship can just come down to frequency matches. How often do you meet couples who say, oh, they just want to go out all the time? Or equally, someone might say, they never talk to me. They never talk to, and we take these things so personally. You know, you might get, I interview people all the time, I interview couples, and you might get one couple saying, I get to the weekend and all I want to do is just stay at home with my partner, just relax and be at home and be together. And the partner is a high frequency person. So they need access and exposure to lots of different people, lots of different groups. And it's not personal to that one person. It's just that they're wired for more connection. So I feel that, well, my observation is we go around taking so many things personally when in fact it just comes down to how we are wired for meaningful connection. So frequency is just how much, and intensity is what type. So you can be
Yeah.
low intensity, mid intensity, or high intensity, and that determines the types of connection you want to engage in.
And with those types, Ali, I have a couple of questions, so I might ask one first. And one is with the low frequency, because I'm definitely a low frequency. Like I'm an introvert. Put me in a box, I'm happy. Um, but for me, my connection comes from my spiritual practice. So for me, it's not around people, it's around a higher perspective, a God, divine, whatever you want to call it. Do you have that in your, like, do you, and I'd love to hear about that if you do in your
Yes, so
research.
so what I say is we all need the same amount of connection. Let's call it connection, just across the board. Some people get most of their connection from other people. If you're a low frequency connector, all that means is that your sources of connection are non-human, to use a
Yeah,
strange term.
non-human. That's great. I
Yeah.
love
So
that.
you'll be looking for connection in, not you, but just a low frequency connector. They'll be looking for connection in, say, their animals, their art, music. When I've interviewed people, they say things like, I'll go to the art gallery on the weekend on my own. I'll watch a movie. I take my dogs for a walk and I listen to audiobooks. All of these things are sources of connection. They're just non-human sources of connection. So when I say someone's low frequency, it just means they're a low frequency human connector and they just need less face to face, or human's just the best way of putting it. The lowest frequency I've ever gotten, and the highest, I should say. So the lowest is 20%. So everyone needs people at least some of the time. And the highest frequency I've ever gotten is 80%. So everyone needs to be on their own at least a small portion of the time. But the 20% frequency, I actually had the opportunity to meet him, and he's a farmer, and he said, my nearest neighbor is 60 kilometers away, and that's how I like it. So he got his connection from his animals on the farm, from just being at peace in nature, just from, you can get your connection from place. Just and First Nations people have been doing that for 40,000 years. There are so many different sources of connection, spiritual connection. It's not just other people, but it's so important to figure out what your source of connection is in order to avoid loneliness. Because, Anjani, if I just pick you up and say, all right, I'm going to put you into this extrovert's life, and you on paper are having all of this different connection with people, you would feel lonely at the end of that. Even though you were surrounded by people, you'd feel lonely because you weren't filled with the source of connection that you need.
That actually goes beautifully into a question I was going to ask, and maybe you could just elaborate on it more. I was going to ask you to distinguish loneliness from aloneness, because
Mm-hmm.
I, like Anjani, I'm somebody who really enjoys being alone. It's my preference, and I spend a lot of time with people, but then I need to recharge alone in nature, with a book, with music, in silence and spiritual practice. But I never feel lonely when I'm doing that. So
No.
I crave aloneness, but that's not loneliness. So I'm wondering, just for our listeners, like how would you distinguish those two things?
Yeah. So what you're describing is solitude. So
Mm,
alone time in peace and nurturing of self is solitude. And it's actually the first step to nourishing relationships with others. So we need to, in fact, I was listening to a podcast with Brene Brown on the weekend, and the line she uses is before you can belong anywhere, you need to belong to yourself. And so that experience of solitude is so important. Loneliness is when you are alone, but you have negative feelings that arise. So it's the negative experience that comes from being on your own. And I see, or that's when that's the loneliness that derives from aloneness. But the way I describe loneliness or define it is much broader. It's just the negative feelings that arise when what we want from connection is not what we're getting from connection. So you can feel lonely in a room full of people. In fact, some of the most profound experiences of loneliness in the literature have been in intimate partner relationships where people are sitting on the couch next to someone but couldn't feel further away from them emotionally. And the expectation is I'm with my life partner, I'm with my romantic partner, and I don't feel connected. And that can be extremely lonely. So loneliness is just a negative feeling that comes from the experience of not having the connection that you would like to be having. That can be when you're on your own. That can be when you are with one other person or a group of people or at a party. In fact, some of my most profound experiences of loneliness have probably been in groups of people where I mean, I'm just thinking of one that comes to mind when I was in high school, very new to this school and sitting in a group of girls who I didn't really know that well. And someone came up and said, "Do you mind if I sit down with you?" And most of us just shuffled around, sure, of course, to make space for her. And one of the girls in the group said, "You can sit with us, but you can't talk." And that experience of, I didn't even have the language for it at the time, but I didn't even feel like I could talk before you arrived. And now I feel completely alienated from this situation. So that kind of loneliness to me is very profound. But it's really important for everyone to realize that loneliness can happen anywhere, whether you're on your own or with others.
Yeah, I'm working with a couple at the moment, and what they're lacking is that emotional intimacy that, just as you said, and they are two very different types. A lot of what you're talking about to me reminds me of all of the philosophy of Ayurvedic medicine and science, which is, what is your body type? What are your elements? What are your main elements? And how do you connect in relationship? And what are your styles of connecting? What are your needs and wants in relationship? And that aspect of knowing your type, your frequency, it, is one beautiful aspect of what the wisdom of Ayurveda brings. So it's really fantastic that you're bringing this to people, because it's something that they can easily grasp. It's something that they can easily identify. Then, having identified that, what do they do with that? Because you just mentioned, what I would call probably people pleasing. And I know it's like a pack mentality, but from there, once we've identified, okay, this is my way of getting my connection, what do we do then? Do you have any suggestions? What would you say to people?
So I think we're pretty clear on frequency, which is the how much element. People would have known about that before, the introvert, extrovert continuum. Intensity is new in the literature, and I think that's really at the heart of what we need to grasp about ourselves and our needs. So intensity is, how do you bond with others? What kind of experience makes you feel most connected to others or to yourself? So intensity is this continuum of, I call it emotional tone. And if you think of frequency as an amount or a percentage of time, intensity is more like a temperature. So on the one side, the lowest intensity, you've got someone who prefers to just be in positive shared experience. So when I ask low intensity people, what do you like to do on the weekend, or what do you like to do with your friends? They'll say things like go surfing, go fishing, go for a bike ride, go kayaking, no eye contact. You're just engaged in activity together, no focus on talking. Then you move up to the mid-intensity types, and they they want entertainment. They want to have fun. So they might be saying things like, oh, we go and see a sports game together. We might play cards together. We go out to dinner or go to the pub in a group. So there's shared experience. It's usually in a group setting and it's a bit of talking, but also a bit of activity. And then high intensity people, what do you do on the weekend? We go to breakfast, we go to coffee, we go to brunch, we go to lunch, we go to dinner, we go to drinks. Any opportunity to sit, eyeball each other, and talk about anything that's going on for us. This could be one-on-one, it could be in a group of other high intensity people. So, generally, when you're seeking out connection, you're looking for people who bond in the same way as you. And I would put a lot of money on the fact that anyone listening, the people that whose company you seek out, either as co-workers or friends, are going to be an intensity match to you. Now, what's interesting is then when you get into romantic relationships, you're not looking for a match. You're not looking for exactly the same as you because you're looking for what I call, it's a match in a way, but you're looking for a missing puzzle piece that will fit with you, but not duplicate. So a friend is a bit like a mirror. You meet a friend who's an intensity match, hopefully a frequency match, and you click straight away because you want to be around each other all the time. A romantic partner is a bit trickier, and it's because you're looking for whether you breed with that person or not. So it gets quite primal. Whether we intend to breed with our romantic partner or not, you're looking for someone who's going to create you 2.0. So you want someone who might smooth out your edges. If you're extreme in one way, you might be looking for you're looking for a balance when you're finding a romantic partner.
Does that happen consciously or unconsciously, Ali?
No, totally unconsciously.
Yeah, I thought so.
And so this is why a lot of people will find friendships a little bit more straightforward than romantic relationships, because friendships, you're just looking for you're looking for your reflection basically in another person. Romantic partnerships are a bit more complex because you're looking for someone to be your complement. Now, if you're looking for a predictive whether a relationship is going to last or not, I can actually, if it's too extreme, so if your frequency is high frequency and you've got a low frequency partner, it's probably not going to last because it's just you're too far apart. If you've got someone who is the highest intensity and someone who's the lowest intensity, it's not going to last because there is just no way of meeting in the middle. You've got some people whose connection type is right in the middle, and so they're compatible with anyone on the grid. But if you're an extreme, it's going to be more difficult to connect with someone on the opposite. So to your question, you were saying, so what do people do with this information, armed with this information? I suggest that people open their calendar for the week and schedule in meaningful connection before you do anything else. So there should be 4 elements of meaningful connection that are a part of your, hopefully every day, if not every day, every week. Those 4 connections are: number 1, belonging to self and place. So loving where you spend most of your time and having a daily practice that helps you feel connected to yourself. It's that feeling of the exhale. So whatever enables you to exhale and breathe deeply. Some people only do that once a day, that they actually, whatever gives you that feeling. And for me, I live near a coastal track in Sydney, and I love to do that once a day. So Robin, you were speaking before about all the beautiful things you do to experience solitude. That's actually my struggle. So I'm one of 5 children. I am a naturally high frequency connector and high intensity connector. So I love people, love connecting through talking, and that's what I do. That's connection for me. When I got into the research and I realized, oh my gosh, to optimize my relationships, I actually need to be able to have nourishing time alone. That's the one thing I will avoid if I can. It's a knee-jerk reaction. It's a problem, and I've had to overcome it. I don't know why I avoid it because when I go into it, I feel exactly the same way that you do, as you describe. Reading, going for a walk on my own, going in the ocean on my own. It's delicious. But for some reason, I just avoid it like some people will avoid parties or big gatherings of social groups. So it's the key for me now.
So interesting. I'm also one of five, actually. But this actually goes to another question I have, which is I'm fascinated by different systems of that create self-awareness for people,
Mhm.
that elevate our consciousness about who we are and kind of what our sense of self and how we express that, what our, challenges. I'm an astrologer, so astrology is my main primary tool for understanding what we need. And obviously, in astrology, there's all kinds of information in a person's chart and how that chart evolves over time and by transit in any moment that really speaks to what we need in relationships.
Mhm.
And then comparing a chart with another person, there's all kinds of relationship astrology, synastry, composites where you're looking for what, like what you said about, well, you want to mirror and balance each other, but if you're too different, then it's too much of a conflict and it's not going to be comfortable and just won't be able to relax with each other or
Yeah,
vibe with each other. But in addition to astrology, there are other systems, right? Like, the introvert, extrovert, and Myers-Briggs, but
yeah,
there's also human design. There's also love languages. There's
yeah.
also, relationship attachment styles. I'm curious what distinguishes your kind of profile and the quiz that you offer for
Yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah.
How does that compare to or distinguish itself from other types of assessments?
Yeah. So I love that question because I'm also fascinated by all these different systems and ways of understanding relationships. I think no one's talked about intensity in the way that I have described it or evaluated it in terms of the types of activities we need. So if you think about the Myers-Briggs and they're talking about intuition or sensing or judging, it's very much what I've found about a lot of these systems, it's understanding you. It's really the self-awareness of when you feel connected. This is more, I wanted to understand what do we bring into groups and relationships? So what are our needs with other people? And the diagnostic assessment actually gives you two results. The first result is where are you connecting now? So based on and the assessment is a series of paired questions. How many conversations do you have per day? How many would you prefer to be having? So it's a series of questions like that. What are you talking about with people? What would you prefer to be talking about with people? So you get two results of where you're currently connecting and where you'd prefer to be connecting. Based on those two results, the gap between them can tell you how lonely or how stressed you are. Because if your current connection is not aligned with how you'd prefer to be connecting, then you're going to experience resistance. And this comes back to the alignment we started talking about. The resistance is in what emotional labor is your environment asking you to do that is out of alignment with who you naturally are. So I'll give you an example. I have three sons. So I live in a house with my husband and three boys. I live with four males. I'm high intensity. So that means I love talking and I love having deep conversations. So I need to organize chats with people like you in order to get my intensity needs met. It's not about saying, oh, I live with these people. And I should give some more context there because there are obviously high intensity men. And by the way, in the last 10 years, that has shifted. There used to be quite a gender split that you had women were high intensity, men tended to be low intensity. Now, it's this interesting mirror of what's happening socially that it's morphing. There's no necessary gender split here. My husband happens to be mid intensity, and my sons are also mid intensity. So what that means is that I can occasionally experience loneliness because we go from watching the rugby to going to the ocean. They're becoming surf lifesavers. Then they're playing sport again. Now we're playing touch football. Now they're playing cricket. We just do all these mid-intensity things. I love sport too, but at the end of the week, sometimes I can feel, hold on, where was I being filled up? And so I need to find my other sources of connection. I think to the question before about what do we do with this information, you can't obviously perfectly design your environment or the people around you to meet all your connection needs. It's about understanding, okay, well, here's my intensity. Here's where I currently am. So there's a misalignment there. What are some activities I can bring into my week that are going to fill me up and give me the sources of connection that I need? And I think that's what this assessment gives us, that it's not a here you are, here's your type, off you go, see you later. It's okay, well, here is where you currently are. So I would hope that people are doing this multiple times throughout their adult life to see where they're connecting. And in fact, I've worked with people going through grief, I've worked with people on workers' compensation who've had injuries at work, and their connection type acutely changed for 12 to 24 months after their injury while they were recalibrating and working out who they were after this catastrophic event. So it's really interesting to use it as a barometer. I guess it's a barometer of alignment. How authentically am I connecting at the moment, and how empowered do I feel?
I think it's a wonderful tool for people to start to, if they're not on a journey of self-awareness, self-development, or have been on one a little while and they're looking for more tools. I think it's a really amazing tool that people can use to start to understand themselves more, and also how they're showing up in the world. You did talk about other systems not referring to how we get our correlation and connection from outside, but I think they do. I think other systems do that. Astrology definitely does. Ayurveda definitely does. So there are many means to bring in that, how do I connect with myself? How do I connect with others? But I wonder, I'm interested in your opinion around how does your work correlate with what we might call soul-driven connection or purpose-led relationships, where yes, we're in a relationship, yes, there's different frequencies and different alignments, but where do the metrics drop away, and where does things like me working through my soul's destiny, working through doing my inner work? What's your take on that?
Can you say more about the metrics dropping away?
Yeah, so once we've identified, okay, this, I'm a high frequency or I'm a low frequency, once we've identified that, and yet we're in a relationship, say we're married to someone, we're in a relationship, and I realize this about me, I realize this about my partner and or my kids. Yes, I can make these changes, but following that, what is the deeper work that I can do for myself, with myself, in myself? And what is the deeper work between me and my partner, my relationships, beyond knowing that type? That's what I'm saying, is when those metrics, once those metrics have been understood, which, your process is going to really help people do that in such an amazing way. I'm just keen to hear if you have any wisdom from that, once you know that, beyond this is where I'm going to source my connection from. What if is there any deep work? Is there any purpose-led relationship? In other words, we have a bond between us. We've entered into these soul contracts. We're here. Do you have any wisdom to share around that? Is that something that you would want to talk about?
Yeah, so I think it, just from hearing you reflect on that question, I think it comes down to deep acceptance. So,
Mm.
also, before we even get to deep acceptance, it actually comes from a shedding of the conditioning of
Mm.
images of relationships that people have.
Mm.
And so, I'll give you an example. If you, my husband and I have been together for nearly 20 years. He's someone who's mid intensity, I'm someone who's high intensity. Once you realize that, we're not going to be one of those couples who go and sit at dinner for hours to talk. But what we discovered is he does love to talk. We just do it on, we go on hikes together. So we go on walks. We'll go for walks for an hour and a half and talk to each other. But for sometimes it's uh, the intensity of just staring someone and looking someone in the eyes, the eye contact that throws people off. So we discovered that we go on day dates, not necessarily dates in the conventional sense. Now, my parents who've been married for 40 years, they love going out for dinner with each other. I grew up with them going out to dinner together. So for a long time, I had this judgment of relationships of no, no, this is what you should do if you are married. You should go out to dinner together. This sounds really superficial, what you're doing on a Saturday night. It's actually quite deep for me because it actually required me to shed the judgments and ideas around relationships that I had and the practicing the sacred acceptance of our relationship as it currently is. And then once you have gone through the acceptance phase of this is us, we are not any other relationship. We're not a relationship on television or in a movie, or my parents or his parents. So then once you practice the sacred acceptance, the relationship almost softens and relaxes in response and then reveals itself in terms of the way that it wants to connect. So I guess the sacred work or the soul work for me is realizing that each relationship is an entity that's it's a vehicle of energy. So it stores its own energy. And it's if you think of it as a container of energy, a lot of people are storing judgment, shame, conditioning, expectations into that little container of energy. And both of you are holding that container of energy all the time. And so if we're storing that level of emotion or energy in the container between us, over time, people aren't going to want to hold that container because it doesn't become a source of anything good for either of you. It just becomes a source of all of those emotions. So I actually think the first step is acknowledging that there's this container between us that we're both investing in. It's like a pool of water. When I'm working with cultures and leaders, I talk to people about everyone in the culture is pouring water into that culture. And we want that water to be clear and something that everyone can swim in. And it's the same thing in a relationship. So if you think about this container of energy that we're pouring into, what is the energy that you're pouring into your relationship? And then how does it actually feel to be in that? I think that in itself, just that sacred responsibility of, oh, I'm actually contributing to this. I think a lot of people see relationships as happening to us, almost as though we're victims of the other person and their energy. But when we start to empower ourselves and realize that we're contributing as well, we're both contributing, something happens, something shifts.
I know that we really are about to wrap up, but I do want to open a can of worms for just a moment. We don't have to fully flesh it out. I'm really curious if you have any thoughts about people turning to AI chatbots for relationship as part of this epidemic of loneliness. Because
Mm.
I've read studies, I'm very concerned with teen populations. I teach teenagers and young adults, and there are studies that suggest now that anywhere from 30 to 60% of teenagers are engaging in relationship, intimate friendship, partnership, relationship with non-human chatbots. And I'm wondering what your thoughts are on that and whether you think a tool like yours could help people sort of have more self-awareness to help them have human-to-human relationships, or do you not see
Mm.
any issue with the, AI type relationships?
So for me, whenever you're looking to AI or social media or anything on a screen to fill some need that you have, that it's a human need that you have. Whenever you're looking for that to be a proxy for the human connection you're deeply seeking, it's a problem. So if you have beautiful relationships in your life and then AI is just something funny or something additional or something bonus, great. But my guess is that it's not. In most of these cases, it's not just an added, it's not just a bonus or an extra or a proxy. It's acting more as a stand-in for the relationships people are deeply craving. So yes, it would be my hope that young people could articulate, these are my needs in frequency. And in fact, I was working with the school and the parents a couple of weeks ago, and I said the best thing we can all do for our children is to help them find a source of belonging on their own that's not on a screen. So what is it that you do when you're on your own that makes you feel nurtured and it has nothing to do with the device? If you have the answer to that, I think you are uh, really far ahead in terms of understanding what belonging is going to feel like. Because the sacred container I was talking about, when it comes to AI, there's nothing being contributed back that's healthy. So it's false, it's counterfeit, it's fake connection. In the same way that you could sit down for dinner and eat a bowl of lollies and pretend that you've had a meal, you've eaten, but it's not good for you. It hasn't nourished you in any way. That's how I see AI.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. There's a lack of nourishment. I think it has a place in terms of there are ways in which you can work with it to supplement our lives, but not to replace them. So I think there's a lot to be said. Thank you, Robin, for opening that can of worms. I think it's a rich conversation, and thank you for sharing your take on it, Ali. I think more research also needs to be done, showing that lack. I too, I work with energy, and there is a relationship body between people and in groups, and that relationship body has its own what's called energy body, which you call the pool, and it's a real thing. It's subtle, it's not gross in terms of it's not manifest, but it's there and you can feel it. It is something that people can feel with their gut, with their instincts, and that kind of thing is not possible with technology because it doesn't have the type of organic auric soul presence that humans do. And so there is, I think as well, I agree with you, Ali, there's a real danger of losing our humanity. And I don't want to be a scaremonger, but I think we just have to be measured about how we're approaching AI. What do you think, Robin?
No, agreed. And I think that there's also the inherent uh, bias with AI because they're responding to what you need. So it's almost like if I'm a low frequency, low intensity person and I'm sharing that with AI, AI can match me really easily, right? But what you said about relationships, and especially intimate relationships that kind of teach us to grow and expand and get out of our comfort zone, if we're only interacting with something that's going to just be sycophantic and agree with us all the time and be exactly what we need, it doesn't actually help us to evolve or learn new skills or grow in interaction. So yeah, more to be said on that in the future. But as we wrap up, Ali, this was such a fascinating conversation. I'm very excited to read your book and to take your quiz. Where can people find more information? How can people find your assessment?
Yeah, so my website is awalker.co, and the assessment is on my company website, which is Ality Life, Ality life.com. And but if you go to my website, awalker.co, it will send you to the assessment as
Great.
well.
And we will link that in the show notes. Is there any last kind of summary wisdom, like a last point that you would love to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, I just really want to send everyone that the sacred container we were talking about. I just want to send everyone my beautiful, hopeful energy for our relationships. I can see even now that so my son's 13 and we're about to have a social media ban introduced in Australia in the next couple of weeks for anyone under the age of 16. I think we're starting to realize that human connection is primary, it should be paramount, and we should protect it at all costs. So regulation is starting to catch up, and I just really send my hope all around the world from us for us being protective of those sacred relationships.
Ali, thank you so much for this really rich conversation. You've given us tools, you've given us perspectives to understand our connection styles, our motivations, but also deeper invitations to lead really from self-awareness, to honor that inner wiring that we have, and also to build cultures and relationships that reflect our greater potential. So listeners, if there's something in this talk stirred you, whether a memory of a relationship you'd like to heal, a workplace culture you'd like to transform, please visit Ali's work, her books, her assessments, and allow that to hold you in that next step and stage of your growth. Ali, thank you again for your time, your insights, and your generosity.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Wisdom We Share podcast. We hope today's episode sparked some new insight, imagination, and practical tools you can integrate into your daily life.
Continue this journey with us by subscribing, sharing, and dropping us a review. Until next time, stay wise.